If you've watched my channel for any length of time, you know one of the big subjects I talk about a lot of is the decarbonization of the steel industry. It is one of the most important things a government could do. It could revitalize the steel industry completely. It could improve the economy of industries and businesses that are sort of on the sidelines of the steel industry that sort of rely on the steel industry existing or sort of feed into the steel industries. It would be a massive boon for creating a net zero things as well if you were to be able to decarbonize, because why the steel industry is one of the biggest consumers of energy. Those big furnaces that they have, if you've ever seen them, and if you ever get the chance, take a trip to Magna. They have this area where you get to see the steel forging process in action, and it's honestly it's incredible to see. If you ever get a chance to see it, definitely recommend a visit to Magna to see it if you do get a chance. But you get to see the scale and the size and sort of the need for power for this industry. It is very, very power hungry, but you can supply it with green energy. And Port Talbot, in particular, a seat of the steel industry in the UK, especially in Wales, could benefit massively from a lot of geothermal stuff, tidal stuff on that on the estuary that it sits on. There's a ton of stuff that could be done. It is an opportunity waiting to be grabbed. And it frustrates me when we've had a government who does nothing about it. But of course, we're about to have a government change. And I am very, very optimistic. Keir Starmer has constantly talked about having a proper industrial plan for the UK. That is very promising. Rachel Reeves talked about greening the UK economy. He's going to be the greenest chancellor we have ever had. You've then got Ed Miliband, my boy Ed, has talked about in the past the importance of decarbonizing the steel industry and the opportunities that we could have if we did it. So I am very optimistic. I'm very optimistic that this can happen. But as I said, it's a long-term project. It will take something in effect of 25 to 20 to 25 years, I think, depending on the reports. Of course, that depends how much money we put into it to be able to achieve this. But again, just like building HS2, once you have built it, once you have built the core, these foundations, you can't have it just ripped away. It will be there and it will be providing a benefit. But of course, you've got to build it first. You've got to invest in it. So this is the opportunity that really comes before us. I'm really, really glad today to see this piece in The Guardian talking about how Labour can look at the steel industry and what it can do for it and improve its future. So I'm really glad that they are talking about this, because this is something that should be talked about a lot more, and the advantages that this could bring. So we're going to go over this because I think it's well worth highlighting. So as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there's a link to the Patreon page, the notification link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can well buy me coffee. And of course, all the other good stuff as well. The Pony Club. Again, there's a video out that I put out just yesterday. We went over Nadine Dorris's highly hilarious bit that she did for the Daily Mail, talking about the giant dials that Google has. It's fun. It's a wild ride. So, like I say, if you are a Patreon member or you are a Pony Club member, like I say, links down below. You can check that out, as well as all the other content that I've done as well. So, as always, thank you very much to everyone who does support the channel that way. So let's get on into this. So this comes from The Guardian with the Guardian view on Labour and the steel industry, how to forge a better future. So earlier this year, 3 former business secretaries openly despaired over Rishi Sunak's reluctance to develop a proper industrial strategy for Britain. This has been said multiple times before, not just under Rishi Sunak, but if you remember the levelling up white paper that we got, well, not that too long ago, you had a very clear message that Britain needs an industrial strategy, that has not had one for quite a while. It needs one. Once it's got one, we can then look at how we can spend the money rather than just going, there's money, do something with it. A strategy is always preferred, because then you can sort of focus where your funding is needed. And then, of course, you have, levels and targets to achieve. Having a strategy, it just makes sense. Not having one does not. And we saw that play out under Boris Johnson with his own levelling up white paper. And I've talked about how that it was a strange contradiction before. The first two chapters were, oh my God, this is amazing. How on earth are they understanding this? And then, of course, you get to the funding chapter, which, of course, had Rishi Sunak's fingerprints all over it, slashing money here and there, when in the first two chapters it says, if you want to do this successfully, we need this amount. Go to the Treasury part. Well, actually, you're only going to get this, which is barely even half, even probably less than half of what they initially had asked for. So back onto this. So one of them, Lord Mandelson, recalled that Mr. Sunak had once told him that, quote, he did not see this as part of his job to have businesses forming an orderly queue in front of his office asking for handouts. So Sunak instantly anti-subsidy. But of course, that is in keeping, as we said before, Sunak is very, very much a free market fundamentalist. That quote tracks exactly with his ideology. But back to it. So for much of Labour's 3 terms in office between 1997 and 2010, it appeared to share this very knee-jerk apathy towards state intervention in the economy. Post-Thatcher, the free market dogma that governments should refrain from picking winners became a cross-party consensus that did needless damage to the country's economic fabric. Yes. And bear in mind, we've had John Major, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown all come out very recently and say, yeah, this trickle-down economics that we followed, it didn't bear out any fruit. We'd hoped it would do. We followed a lot of people's advice who said if we did this, this would be, a fantastic thing to do. But eventually this did not help. This actually led to a lot of destitution and led to Brexit. So it is good that is now seen to become definitely across, that if you follow this notion of trickle-down economics, which the Tories are still all on board for, it does not work. So we'll see what happens if that becomes, or how Labour might change their own economic thinking in response to a lot of these things that have been coming out about that. So, thankfully, Labour's thinking on this began to change after the financial crash and has developed further as the country faces challenges of the green transition and transformed geopolitics. Again, this has been good. I will agree, they have been changing their thinking on this. So this week, there was more encouraging evidence that Keir Starmer is laying the groundwork for a very different approach. Again, this does fill me with a lot of work I've said about decarbonising the steel industry. So during a visit to Britain's largest steelworks at Port Talbot, the Labour leader emphasised the need for direct, proper government support towards an industry that has been troubled more or less since it was privatised in the 1980s. Again, fills me with hope. Keir Starmer spoke against the backdrop of threatened job losses in Wales and at the British Steel in Lincolnshire. As the sector moves away from its carbon-intensive production, Labour promised to invest over $3 billion in smoothing that green transition should it win power at the next election. And there is substantially more than offers to be made by Mr. Sunak's government to Tata Steel and the Chinese Zhang Group, the represent owners of the Port Talbot Works and British Steel. As Keir Starmer pointed out, with the right kind of backing and vision from Westminster, domestic steel production can become a critical component of meeting Britain's clean power targets. As we said at the beginning, it would be an amazing thing to do. That in turn will help protect good, well-paid jobs in regions that desperately need them. Again, fills me with hope. Fills me with hope because there's so many people on the Labour front benches that get this transition, that not just for the steel industry, but going forward to net zero as a whole. So it is really, really good that we are seeing this. But after years of short-sighted Whitehall priorities, a radical change in the mindset is needed, as well as money. Since 2015, with a combination of Chinese steel dumping and austerity, plunged the industry into crisis, and a hands-off government approach pursued short-term bailouts before handing over to the next foreign investor. Output has more than halved in recent years, and the sectoral decline has made the country an outlier in relation to other G20 nations. That is something that we don't talk about. We are massively behind when it comes to steel production, and steel is such a important strategic resource, not only for building things in this country, like I say, building HS2, if we could just produce all the steel necessary for the rails, that would be a massive boost to helping to build HS2 and to help keep the costs down. And of course, to keep all the wealth that gets spent on it inside the UK. But there you go. So at the same time, other growing global instability has laid bare the dangers of neglecting the sovereign capability of such vital areas. Britain is set to require more, not less steel. Again, important if we are to build towards net zero, which he does get. So Britain is required to build more, not less steel, as it builds more net zero machinery and infrastructure at pace. So again, they point out if we are going to build in towards this net zero future, then we need steel. Best to have a domestic producer to be able to do that. If you've ever played Victoria 3, you'll know the importance of steel and how that plays into your economy, especially if you want to industrialize. Just something for all those Victoria 3 players out there. So it can be a catalyst for industrial renewal if a committed government shows the drive and imagination to make it do so. And I really do think Labour can do that. I think they've got that. So new public procurement rules, for example, could ensure the use of clean British steel in the manufacturing of wind turbines rather than reliance on imports from abroad. Currently, the underpowered UK Infrastructure Bank could be fired up to deliver the kind of innovative financing required by a sector in transition. Something that could be done. The UK Infrastructure Bank, something that has been left pretty much on the vine to wither away. This is something that Labour have talked about that they could sort of reinvest in and bring back. So again, a lot of promise coming up. Equally, stakes or even golden shares could be considered by a future Labour government wishing to try and safeguard public investment and subsidies. In contrast to Mr. Sunak, who remains completely welded to the laissez-faire economic instincts of a previous era, Labour is cautiously embracing the principles behind such ideas. In doing so, it is creating one of the next election's most important dividing lines. And I think they should really double down on this. Labour should really double down on this. This is an important area because I'll tell you what, how do you embarrass the Conservatives when they've promised all this levelling up and then proceeded to do nothing about it? Come out with an industrial plan saying, this is what we're going to do. This is how we are going to do it. This is how we are going to transform the UK economically, and bringing back the steel industry in a big way is going to be a very big vote winner. A very big vote winner. So I keep on saying it, I am very, very optimistic. I am very optimistic. And when you see Keir Starmer come out and say things like this, it just reinforces the fact what I've been saying all the time, that there are people on the front bench. There's him, There's Rachel Reeves, there's Ed Miliband, who get it when it comes to net zero. And I am really optimistic. I am really optimistic about when we get Labour in power. Finally, going to be able to do some real good, especially when it comes to things like the steel industry and, of course, creating a green economy. So I am really, really optimistic about that. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And, of course, as always, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And, of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.